Welcome to the NIHR Dementia Researcher podcast, brought to you by dementiaresearcher.nihr.ac.uk in association with Alzheimer's Research UK and Alzheimer's Society, supporting early career dementia researchers across the world.
Hello and welcome to the Dementia Research podcast on location from Alzheimer's Association International Conference in San Diego. So I'm Dr. Sarah Bauermeister, and today I have the pleasure of guest hosting the third of these special podcasts, sharing highlights with three fantastic early career research guests. So today we're going to cover the third day of the conference, but before we start, let me make some introductions. So those who don't know me, I am Dr. Sarah Bauermeister. I'm a senior scientist at the University of Oxford, where I run a program looking at early adversity and dementia, and I'm also senior data manager for Dementia's Platform UK. So let's move on to our brilliant guests. I'm delighted to introduce Esther Hui, Dr. Claire Lancaster, and Dr. Darina Petrovsky. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Okay, so let's get on with your introductions. So, Esther, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Esther, and I'm a final year PhD candidate at University College London. I make and test psychosocial interventions for people with dementia. So for my PhD, I developed a virtual individual cognitive stimulation therapy, which is a facilitator-delivered and 14 version of ICST that's virtual. And I kind of tested it in Hong Kong as well as the UK. And yeah, I'm submitting my thesis in a month, and yeah.
Well, congratulations on the pending submission, and thank you. It's a really interesting field. So Claire, I know you're a regular on these roundup shows, so any tips you can offer, do let me know. You go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
So I'm an Alzheimer's Society Research Fellow working at the University of Sussex. I'm interested in the kind of cognitive consequences of functional hyperactivity or aberrant hyperactivity in carriers of a genetic risk variant. I mainly focus on people who are healthy and in midlife because I'm really interested in preventative strategies, and I'm currently looking at an anti-epileptic to see if taking a very low dose of it can actually improve cognition in people who are at risk.
Oh, nice. Very, very interesting. I must talk to you about our neurodeficit poster that we had up the other day and see what overlap we have with your work. So, Darina, can I come to you now, and maybe you can also tell us about your new role in iStart?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on here. My name is Darina Petrovsky. I'm an assistant professor and nurse scientist at Rutgers University School of Nursing and the Institute for Healthcare Policy and Aging Research at Rutgers. I just finished my first year as a faculty member, so very exciting. And prior to that, I was a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania in the US, as well as NYU, New York University. My work centers around music-based interventions for older adults living with dementia and their caregivers. Right now, in my current project, I'm testing and developing a mobile-based application, a music-based application for this population. And this is actually my first time attending AAIC in person, although you would think that I should have been here all these years since this is my area of work, but I'm really excited to attend. And then to answer your second part of the question, yes, so I started as a programs chair under the PIA with iStart. So my responsibilities are going to be primarily on organizing webinars and other events related to promote careers of early career researchers. So glad to be here.
Oh, well, welcome, and fantastic news on your faculty position. Well done for that, and it looks like you're going to have a really busy time ahead of you with the iStart work as well. So let's get down to business. what I'm going to ask you a little bit about is, what do you think of San Diego? Any comments from any of you?
I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's really relaxed, it's really fun, it's really beautiful. Yeah, big fan.
Great. Any other comments?
I'm amazed by how many steps I'm able to get in every day. And I was just talking with somebody at breakfast that they're averaging about 10,000 steps. And I think given maybe it was strategic on the in terms of how the planning committee organized it. So I really like the open space here, and obviously I love the water and the boats and everything. So that's been really exciting. I mean, I'm staying about a mile away from the convention center, so I'm glad I did that, because I'm kind of exploring more of the San Diego outside of what's on the waterfront. So, but yeah, this is my second time in the city, and it's very exciting. It's beautiful.
Lovely. I can attest to the steps. I think I did 29,000 the other day looking for a t-shirt because I didn't bring enough clothes. I packed a bit too light, and yeah, that was
Says no one ever.
Yes. So Esther, what do you think of San Diego?
Yeah, it's really nice. I like that we're by the water. I always because I'm from Hong Kong, I love water. So it's nice that we're close by, and yeah, I really like this venue as well. It's quite spacious, so if we want to have meetings with other people during the conference, it's very easy to find a spot. And
yeah, I must say the venue has been fantastic, and I think I've been spoilt with the morning runs along the seafront. I don't know how I'm going to get back to used to running in Oxford again. So, this is a question to all of you, actually, and feel free to speak about your presentations. Have any of you presented at the conference, and would you like to tell me a little bit about your presentation?
Yeah, so I presented on my main PhD study yesterday as a poster presentation, and I think it should be still online. So I ran a feasibility randomized control trial in the UK for the virtual individual cognitive stimulation therapy. So it's on, so the presentation is on that. So we found that it's feasible and also acceptable to run the study. So if you're interested to know more, you can find it on the AAIC website. So my intervention is essentially a hybrid of CST and also ICST, and then I merge it together and put it in a virtual platform. Unlike before, it's because the original ICST was carer delivered, but this one is different because it's facilitator delivered, and we do see effect size and cognitive function that's similar to the original CST. But I can't really say too much because it's obviously very underpowered. So we need a larger trial to find out more. Yeah.
Oh, well, fantastic. And has the response to your research been very positive?
Yeah, so far, yeah. And I'm amazed at the amount of people that actually came up to me and wanted to talk about it. So I'm glad I printed out A4 pieces of versions of it, so I can just hand out to, So.
Yeah, I commend you for having, whipping up a poster upon command. When I met you yesterday evening, you just said, "Oh, well, here's my poster. Here you go. Here's more information." So take note, anybody who is listening, to have your business cards and perhaps a copy of your poster nearby.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, well done on that. Anyone else want to tell the listeners about a presentation they've given here, or a talk, or even a conversation?
I presented on Sunday. Again, it was a poster. I was presenting the results of a web-based cognitive study. So we were looking at mnemonic discrimination performance in about 400 mid-aged people grouped by APOE genotype. So I was really interested in this because mnemonic discrimination reliably correlates with patterns of functional hyperactivity in the hippocampus. And counter to my hypotheses that E4s would show impairments in mnemonic discrimination, their performance was remarkably similar to the E3s. And it was a really large sample size, so I was quite surprised. but probably suggests there's no effect in midlife, which in itself is very interesting.
That's really interesting. And so possibly, do you think if you just go up and into older age, you might find those effects?
I would think so. So my next step is to do a larger lifespan study, because I mainly focus on kind of young adults and mid-age adults, but definitely extending it to a wider population and kind of looking at how different kind of lifestyle characteristics exacerbate kind of detrimental effects of the gene, is what I'm really interested in doing next.
Fantastic, really interesting. Anyone else want to tell us about, before we start going over some of the highlights of the conference?
I have not presented this time. I really wanted to see sort of what the conference is about first, but I was really I have been impressed by all the posters and the presentations. So now I'm definitely excited to submit some of my work next year and the following year. So, and since I'm not presenting, I try to maximize my time here and really use it for networking and meeting individuals, because that is something that, I've been deprived of given the pandemic.
It's incredibly valuable to do that. So as you said, even if you're not presenting, the networking, the collaborative talks that you have with each other, and also I think sometimes if you're not presenting, just attending, it frees you up to pick and choose your talks, the posters you want to look at without thinking, I've got to present. So yes. I think I'd really want to encourage listeners to attend the conference, irrespective of whether they're presenting or not, especially early career researchers and students.
Yeah, I was going to add, I'm pretty fortunate that I have the funds to attend here, even if I'm not presenting, but I understand that for some students, in my case, when I was a PhD student, sometimes you had to present in order to receive funding to attend the conference. So this is, I'm very fortunate to have the funding, but absolutely, you have to take it all in.
Yep, make the most of a rich and diverse conference. So now I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to go first with Esther, and I'm going to ask each of you just to share a couple of highlights from the conference that really struck out to you as being exciting or special. So for example, I saw a poster, I actually tweeted the poster looking at ethnic diversity, and I'm running workshops this year funded by AAIC in the Black, African and Caribbean community, trying to engage this population in dementia research. So I was really excited to see this poster, recognizing that we really need to address ethnic diversity both in cohort populations but also in our research. So that was my highlight, I think, so far. So Esther, do you have a couple of highlights that you might want to talk about?
So I am an ethnic minority, so things about that always stand out to me. So I think there was a plenary talk on homelessness and also aging and homelessness, and I think what shocked me about that whole there are a lot of really good highlights from that presentation, but I think one statement really stood out to me was housing is medicine, and it was shocking to me that minorities were affected. I think the figures were 3 to 4 fold more than others, so that really stood out to me, and so that was one of the highlights from that particular presentation. And I also went to the presentation on dementia care research, interventions in dementia. So I was just quite amazed at the different types of non-pharmacological interventions that were included, from TDCS, different telehealth interventions, VR. And it's also I guess something that stood out to me was a lot of these were actually feasible and acceptable. The VR, I was quite skeptical about VR therapy for people with dementia initially. Virtual reality therapy, but I was this actually seems to be working. So yeah, that stood out to me. And also there was one presentation on preventing loss of independence through exercise. I think it was a from UCSF. I think what they had a clinical meaningful results for like well-being, mobility, caregiver isolation, caregiver self-regulation, which was quite positive. And they also found that there are like new benefits to actually moving the intervention from like in person to online. I don't remember very clearly, but I think they started out probably in person and then switched it to online, and that was quite encouraging too, that like there are new benefits from like moving an intervention online, because I do like virtual interventions, so that also stood out to me.
Fantastic. I think that if we can move interventions to online, we suddenly can reach such a wider audience, I think, and it's just so much easier, because if we think of people who are cognitively impaired, it's really difficult for them to travel and to get to places. So suddenly I think the use of virtual reality and online interventions is really, really important, and it's very exciting to see that this is no longer just, we're not sure if it's the same, but moving forward as a positive impact.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a presentation, I think, on Monday. I want to say the days have blurred together, but a presentation from the Fingers Network, right? I don't know if you've attended that, but one of the speakers presented adherence rates to the intervention sort of pre-COVID, when they were in person, transitioning to virtual. And they've shown from the figures that he's shown, I think, that the adherence was actually very comparable to in-person. This is, I believe, in individuals with cognitive impairment. And in one of the, I think, adherence to, I forget whether it was exercise or one of the interventions was actually higher, sort of, virtually wise. And so they've concluded that, even though pandemic has caused a lot of the sort of natural experiments to occur in this space, that there were still encouraging findings that they were still able to adhere, and fidelity was still high when moving to an online format. So I wonder if there's going to be a lot of sort of reviews and systematic reviews published on this topic as this sort of natural experiment unfolded in front of us.
It's interesting because I wonder if simply that, we became an online world, didn't we, during the pandemic? Yeah. And so that perhaps looking at virtual reality as an intervention and online assessment and interventions, it's much more readily accessible now, simply because of, it's easy to go online, or it's acceptable to go online. And I think that's interesting to look at in itself. I don't know how you would look at that. Don't want to bring back another pandemic just to test it out. But any other highlights, Darina, from the conference that really struck you?
Sure. I mean, I did also enjoy the homelessness and dementia talk yesterday. Just, when the speaker opened up about, just by going outside of the convention hall, not too far from here, this problem obviously exists. The session that I went to yesterday, so it was outside of the scientific sessions, but it was, I think we were both at, with Esther, it was organized by the AWARE PIA, so the women in science in this space, and we had breakfast, I think, a day before, and yesterday there was a panel of 3 very distinguished women scientists, and they talked about sort of their windy roads of their careers, and they shared some of the challenges and some of the highlights, some of the good things that happened. And we really had, even though the room was very big and there was a lot of attendees, it did feel more intimate, and you really had a chance to ask a lot of questions that you otherwise would not be able to ask. And so that was really truly highlight, because I joined obviously the peers PIA, and I'm really passionate about promoting careers of early career researchers. But obviously, like, women in science is another topic that I'm really passionate about. So I really, really enjoyed those events. And obviously, it's not sort of content, expertise, but I think navigating, academia or industry as a woman scientist, I think, is really worth a thought. And I'm really glad that Alzheimer's Association leadership, Dr. Heather Snyder, Dr. Murray Carrillo, they're very passionate about this topic, and I'm glad to see several events dedicated to that.
Yes,
so
I think it's very welcome to see that, and I think anyone missed some of those sessions, it's very worth looking online to catch up on those. So Claire, tell us about any highlights which struck you over the conference.
So I went to a talk yesterday by Arjuna Sen from the University of Oxford on the early results from the Iliad trial. So this was a trial looking at the effect of levetiracetam, which is an anti-epileptic drug, on cognition in people with Alzheimer's disease. And it was super, super interesting to hear more about kind of the speaker's thoughts on the connection between Alzheimer's and epilepsy. I think it's a huge area for kind of future research and has a lot of potential for new treatments. And obviously the trial was hit really badly by COVID, so they only ended up recruiting about 9 people. But even with these 9 people, they could say there was very few side effects of the drug, so it was really well tolerated. And there was a small, non-significant, but they only had about 9 people, effect of the drug on cognition.
That's really positive.
The other thing which absolutely blew my mind was the homelessness talk by Margot Richaud. I just never thought about it before, and AAIC always has these plenaries which I just blow my mind because I've just never considered it before.
So I think across all of you've all mentioned the homelessness talk, and I think that is, I think there's definitely, I don't know if you all agree, there's more awareness now of people who are sidelined from mainstream research, such as the LGBTQ population, such as the homelessness population. And I think it's really refreshing to come to such a large international conference to see these issues, women in science as well, being addressed as key talks. So I'm really encouraged that these are starting to headline research. So before I wrap up, is there anyone else who would like to say anything about something which has really stood out this conference, or actually whether something you've really enjoyed, whether it was in the conference or outside of the conference? Baseball game? Did anyone go to a baseball game?
Didn't go to a baseline game. AAIC have thrown some very good parties. I've enjoyed the dancers with flashing lights. They've been good.
I think that's great. I think it's all part of the conference experience that we can at least let our hair down and enjoy ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, there've been a couple of breakfast events organized by different PIAs, and I know I've heard really great things about the student and the postdoc luncheon experiences. So if any of you attended that, I have not, but I heard really there was great attendance, and I've just been trying to attend sessions this time around that are really outside of my comfort zone. So for example, in yesterday's session, I think that was intentional of the planning committee to pair up, the homelessness talk with the second talk talked about the different genes in autosomal dominant. I don't think I would have listened to the talk otherwise, but that is something that and I tried my best to follow it and understand that, the person who presented, he's really well known in that part of the world, and he's done amazing things. And then I've been involved in some conversations, that talks about the amyloid and the tau, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm following enough to at least have a very general sense of sort of what's going on and kind of take it all in. And I've also had a chance to connect with our local chapter of the Alzheimer Association. So right before leaving to go to this conference, I did a community education event there, and I saw that the executive director of our New Jersey chapter was going to be here as well, and I have never met her in person, even though we both live in the same state, and because since most of the programming has been virtual, so I did connect with her, and I feel like, okay, now like going back, I feel like, she knows who I am and I know who she is, and perhaps there would be something new and exciting, coming out of it. So I would say those have been the highlights, and it's been amazing to. One other session I do want to bring up was the research perspectives, the conversations with the award winners, recipients. I thought that was so excellent, and I wish more of sort of the senior folks have visited the student and postdoc lounge, because the programming has been excellent.
I think that's very encouraging feedback for AAIC to hear this. Esther, any final comments?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the event for women that we both went to yesterday. I think that was probably the highlight of like AAIC for me, because they shared a lot of struggles and personal struggles that I could really relate to. And yeah, it was. I thought it was very empowering, and I'm looking forward to one of the speakers' talk actually today on delirium. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So, well, I think that's all we have time for today. And what are you all, so Esther's just mentioned what she's looking forward to today. What are you all looking forward to in today's schedule?
I think there's a symposium on digital cognitive markers, which I'm quite excited for.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Okay, so maybe that's where I head today. So
yes, and then of course I think the I Start reception I think is tonight, so that seems very appropriate to kind of almost end the conference. So I'm looking forward to that, and also the plenary talk with Dr. Sharon Inouye. It's going to be very exciting.
Okay, well, thank you so much, all three of you. So, as ever, you can find Twitter links and the bio for today's guests on the Dementia Research website at dementiaresearcher.nihr.ac.uk. It's time to end today's podcast recording, and I'd like to thank our guests, the outstanding Esther Hui, the awesome Dr. Claire Lancaster, and the brilliant Dr. Darina Petrovsky. Thank you very much, and goodbye from me and from these wonderful guests.
Brought to you by dementiaresearcher.nihr.ac.uk in association with Alzheimer's Research UK and Alzheimer's Society, supporting early career dementia researchers across the world.